What's TOD?
Oh, could you go back once? TOD is transit-oriented development. And typically what we've seen across the nation, across the world as a matter of fact, is that when you have good, solid transit around the stations, people try to locate themselves so that they can take advantage of this mode. And what you see typically is the very mixed-use type of development that develops. That community tends to be more walkable, more bikeable, much more pleasant. You don't even have to get into your car. You just walk to get to the station, and you can get anywhere in the area. And so the transit-oriented development is something that we didn't assume as part of our studies. When we were trying to estimate ridership, we didn't assume that the TOD was going to occur. But so when it does occur, it'll be even kind of icing on the cake. But we know, based on what you see in other areas, we know it's going to occur. But the point is that we didn't rely on it as part of our projections. But we think that's a major component, because as that area starts to develop, and that's not the city doing stuff now, this is the private sector going out and developing around stations on their own. And what the city is doing is trying to place down some zoning to allow TOD to happen, because right now the zoning laws are such that it's difficult to have that kind of TOD mixed-use type of development. So what they're doing is they're trying to work on some overlay zoning in those areas to enable. And it doesn't direct people that they have to do it, but if you want to do it, you can. And that's where the city's trying to help. But we're not going out and buying land and trying to do the development ourselves. We think the private sector can do a much better job of that than we can. Again, environmental benefits. It is clear it's a green way of mode of transportation, and we were kind of puzzled as to why Sierra Club is not embracing this project completely. Across the nation, Sierra Club tends to be on the side of the rail, on the pro side of the rail. So we're a little puzzled as to why the local Sierra Club isn't that way. But it is a green solution to transportation. Next slide, please.
Wait,
yes?
I have a question. On the energy consumption?
Yes?
The reduction, what is that energy consumption? We're reducing gas?
Yes, generally, rail has always been thought of as a very efficient mode of travel, because the friction on the rails, once you get the thing moving, is very minimal. So having that mode is a much more efficient way of utilizing energy to move people along in a corridor than driving, say. And the other thing about energy is that it's all electric, and it doesn't care how that electricity is produced. So we start doing things like doing more wind power and more other alternative ways of producing electricity that's just as good to the rail as if it was generated using fossil fuel. So again, that's another benefit there. Again, sustainable construction design. The city policy is that anything we build that's a building-wise, of course the guideway isn't going to be lead anything, right? The guideway is a concrete structure out there. But the stations, for example, anything policy in the city is that when we build something, it's LEED silver at least. Next slide, please. Okay. Major project milestones, and there have been many milestones. One of the things that you hear people say is that, how can you take this risk of going ahead when we still don't have our full funding grant agreement, things like that? The reason why we feel so confident is because we've had to achieve many, many, many milestones. Any which one, if we didn't achieve it, the project wouldn't have gone forward. The project would have been dead. And we've achieved so many milestones already. It's a good indication to us that the Federal Transit Administration and in fact they've told us so, that they feel good about this project, and they feel this is a very good project. They want us to proceed, and they could have stopped us at any one of those scores of milestones that we went through. The latest one we went through was getting the final EIS released, Governor accepting the EIS, which we really appreciate that Governor Abercrombie finally got this thing moving. Then results in the record of decision from the Federal Transit Administration in early this year. And of course, record of decision is what formally ends the planning phase of the project, the environmental clearance phase of the project. So the record of decision enabled us to do certain things. We don't have green light yet to do unlimited construction, but we do have the green light the major things we got green light on was, first of all, utility relocation, and secondly, property acquisition. So we're doing those things right now. And of course, the groundbreaking was in late February of this year. So, what are we doing? Well, okay, like I said already, we're already out there doing utility relocation. You've already seen us in the ground on other things that aren't related to the actual construction, but they look like construction. And what you see is these big rigs drilling a hole into the ground. And those actually are not part of our construction, that's part of our testing program. Because most of these columns that the guideway will sit on are expected to be on drilled shaft foundations. So what they're doing is that they're doing the drill shaft as a test of the soil conditions. And they're actually going to drill one in there. It's a hole 8 feet wide and anywhere between 80 to 100 feet deep. Put the cage in and drop the concrete in, let it cure, and then instrument the hell out of it on the top, and then start to load it and see what happens. And to make sure that nobody accused us of construction, this is too bad, because it would have been nice to actually place these where we think the columns are going to go. But to make sure that no one accused us of construction, these are in areas that the columns will not be. We know it won't be there. So when we're done with it, we're going to take off a few layers of the top, throw dirt back on it, and just leave it there. And it'll be forever a piece of concrete in the ground.
So how do you know that it's going to be the same structure and that the soil will be the same half a mile away or wherever?
Well, we're doing more than one of these. And as far as the soil conditions, what they're doing is they're doing representative soil condition areas based on the other borings that they've done along the alignment. So they're trying to get representative soil conditions based on the borings that they've seen and test those type of representative conditions. That's what's going on right now, and we're also working hard on this, which is the creation of HART, which is the Honolulu Area for Rapid Transportation, Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation. The HART is kind of like it's a return, right, of something before. HART, if you remember back in the 80s, there was a rail system that was proposed. And that was called HART, but back then it stood for Honolulu Area Rapid Transit. But this is, HART in this case refers to what the authority would be called. So essentially my entire Rapid Transit Division will break away from my department and will become a semi-autonomous transit authority. Okay? Almost similar, very, very similar to the Board of Water Supply. And that's slated for July 1st of this year. And that was the charter amendment that went to the voters last election. And the voters approved that with a large majority. So we're moving ahead. We're going to be requesting the entry into final design this summer. And again, the request for entry into final design is an important step, because when they give us the permission to enter final design, that is also the precursor to going into full funding grant agreement. Okay? And full funding grant agreement is when the federal government, or FTA, Federal Transit Administration, says, yes, we promise to give you X dollars. Okay, right now they've been saying things like, well, we're going to give you $1.55 billion, and they've been backing it up in writing in terms of when you look at the FTA administrator's report to Congress, the one in February. It lists those projects that actually have full funding grant agreement and their amounts, and then they list a bunch of projects that have pending full funding grant agreement and their amounts, and we're in that list. And the amount attached to our project is $1.55 billion. So FDA is willing to put it in writing to report to Congress. So if we get accepted into final design, and there's steps we're going through still to do that, and we do get the full funding grant agreement, that'll solidify the federal component of our funding. Now, of course, the local funding component is already secured, right? That's through the general excise tax surcharge, and that's going well. And the reason why we say it's going well, even though the economy is the way it is because we estimated low. We estimated the revenue that we estimated from the GET surcharge was estimated low to begin with. So when the economy kind of tanked out, it turns out to be right about where we were estimating anyway. So that's going well for us. We have enough. We think of a good plan. We've just submitted our draft financial plan for entry into final design to FDA. It's our draft plan. So they're going to review it, come back, and probably ask us to do some changes. We'll do those changes and resubmit, and hopefully they'll put us into final design. And then finally, again, the process takes a while to go through it, but we think we can get a full funding or grant agreement with FDA by October 2012. And that's a good thing, and we think we might get it even before then. That's a good thing, but that's about, if you followed in the council hearings this week, the present council is saying that they're uneasy authorizing any bond float prior to a full funding grant agreement. And according to our financial plan, we won't need a bond float till about this time. So hopefully this schedule is good, because then we'll have a full funding grant agreement before we need to float any bonds. Now, just to clear up that whole issue about the bonds also, this project has always talked about financing, but it's not in the traditional sense. It's not like we're going to go out, float bonds to finance the project, and then pay it off over the life of the project. The way this works is, because of the cash flow in and out, during the peak of the construction, we're going to be paying out money faster than the GET surcharge is coming in. So to take care of that cash flow situation, we're doing short-term borrowing, right? And that borrowing would be paid off by the sunset of the general excise tax surcharge, which is 2020. It's December 2022, but because the payments from the state lag, it ends up being about the first quarter of 2023. Okay? But by that time, we're paid off and we're debt-free. So it's not like a traditional 30-year bond in which you borrow and pay it off over a long period of time. What we're doing is more short-term borrowing to handle the cash flow variances that we're experiencing on the project. But the only type of instrument that's available to us is a general obligation type instrument. And so that's why we have to go to council to get the approval to do that, because the only council can approve any kind of float of general obligation type instruments. Sir?
The city council in the newspaper, they said that they came up with a plan B that they for financing, and they wanted the whole control of that instead of having HART, as it's set up, would be handling all the financial decisions and all. They say that city council wants to do that. Now do you know about Plan B and comment about it?
Yeah, I was sitting through it all this week. And
part of the equation, I think.
And I'm going to be careful how I answer this, because I don't want to offend council. I understand what council is worried about. Council is worried about making sure that they have adequate oversight over what's going on, and we agree they should have adequate oversight. But if you look at the charter amendment that was passed by the voters, our corporation council at least believes that that's not the correct way to handle it. I mean, essentially what the charter amendment says is that the Transit Authority Board has the appropriation authority over the transit fund. So the City Council does not have that appropriation authority over the transit fund. Now, if HART comes in and requests anything out of the general fund, absolutely. Council has full jurisdiction over the general fund, so they would have the say-so appropriation authority over the general fund. But if the only thing they're pulling out are the proceeds of the general excise tax surcharge or federal funds that have been placed into the transit fund, only the HART board has appropriation authority over that fund.